This is the cat today accepted as the emblem of the Isle of Man, the Manx cat. And the three legs of man, a heraldic design originating from Sicily. The tail of the tailless tabby is interesting. The Manx cat is found throughout Asia. Just outside Douglas, the capital of the island and near to Castletown, is Ronald's Way, the main airways terminal. To and from the principal cities in England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, aircraft movements make Ronald's Way one of the busiest air terminals in the British Isles. 75 minutes flying time from London, and midway between England and Ireland, the Isle of Man is 30 miles long and 10 miles wide. Not far from Ronald's Way is King William's College. The original building was burned down in the year 1844. Reconstruction and enlargement since that time have made it a renowned seat of learning. The outstanding feature of Castletown is Castle Rushen. Magnificently preserved, this mainly Norman structure is now a court of justice. The ancient single-handed clock is alleged to have been the gift of Queen Elizabeth I of England. The castle is built entirely of limestone, an amazingly preserved monument to a bygone age. A floral design of the three legs of man can be seen on Douglas Promenade, whilst flowers are everywhere, and in the sunshine, fountains play, reflecting the colourful continental scenes on the fine promenades. Journeys into the luxuriant and fascinating interior of the island can be made from Douglas, which is the starting point for the exploration of the island's 500 miles of motor roads and lanes. There are unrivaled views from the mountain roads and coastal drives. Green hills are splashed with heather, and many enchanting glens wait to be explored. Out in Douglas Bay stands the Tower of Refuge, 125 years old. It was built to afford shelter to shipwrecked sailors. Douglas combines the interests of a modern city with the charm of a stimulating and colourful playground. Probably nowhere else in Europe can there be found another horse-drawn street tramway system. One of the attractions of Douglas, they have held sway here in face of electrification and motor buses. There are almost 300 acres of parks, glens and open spaces in Douglas. Amongst the most beautiful is Summerhill Glen. All glens begin high up in the mountains. A trickling stream winds its way downwards. Eventually, what began as a small flow of water becomes a torrent, carving out its banks, which, after the passage of uncounted time, become a home for trees and bushes. 100 years ago, whilst a bishop was taking a service in the old church at Kirkbraden, someone passed him a note to say that there were far more people in the churchyard than in the church, and requesting him to come out when he reached the time for preaching the sermon. That was the beginning of the Kirkbraden open-air services, which are held every summer Sunday in a glorious natural amphitheatre outside the church. With the three legs of man to remind you where you are, the milestone tells we are not far from Laxey with its picturesque harbour and old world charm. The unspoilt beach provides relaxation. Laxey Glen Gardens provide shaded walks along winding paths flanked by trees of enchanting colours. The pavilion overlooks the beautiful glen, and orchestras play here under the magical sky of a summer night. The Manx Electric Railway terminus at Laxey is the starting point for the never-to-be-forgotten ascent of Snaefell. Snaefell is the island's only mountain rising 2,000 feet above sea level, and across the plains of heaven, another view of Snaefell can be seen. It's quite an experience to ride almost from sea level to the top of a mountain. It takes 30 minutes to reach the summit after a 5-mile journey of breathtaking scenic beauty. Below us is the famous Laxey wheel, still turning as it has done for over 100 years. Let's have a closer look at a feat of engineering which, when it was first conceived, staggered the imagination. The Lady Isabella, as the Great Wheel is known, has a diameter of 73 feet, a breadth of 6 feet, and a circumference of 217 feet. Its top speed was 2 revolutions a minute, and it raised over 250 gallons of water a minute from the old mines 300 fathoms below ground. The water to supply the wheel is brought from the reservoirs in the mountains and ascends through the circular white pillar to the top of the wheel. Today, the wheel is a splendid showpiece, and thousands of visitors climb the staircase round the pillar to the platform at the top, from which they are rewarded by the magnificent view of the Laxey Valley. With a last look at the Great Wheel, we continue our Snaefell ascent. From Snaefell summit, almost the whole of the island can be seen. Below us, shimmering in the sunlight, is Ramsey. At St. John's Junction, en route for Ramsey, we see the second of the island's railway systems, the narrow-gauge Isle of Man Railway. The engine's hauling power is such that the steepest gradients are negotiated with ease. The Isle of Man is self-governing. On Midsummer Day every year, the ceremony of Tynwald is carried out on Tynwald Hill, and processions of great splendor can here be witnessed on the great day of the announcement of the law. From the Albert Tower, we can look down on Ramsey, another favorite island resort. Here at Ramsey is the lovely Murek Park with its avenues of flowers, subtropical plants, shady palm trees, and the 12-acre seawater yachting lake where it is fun to be becalmed. Nature has done her part lavishly in providing Ramsey with a superb setting. The magnificent bay extending in no less than a 10-mile crescent of sun-dappled seas. Down a fuchsia-lined lane, we make our way to Cashtel in Ard. Megalithic stones stand here gaunt against the sky. Once the burial place of prehistoric man, they are one of the unsolved puzzles of history. Wherever one chooses to look, there are typical Isle of Man scenes and cameos. Here they are played out against the background of Mackle Lighthouse. In the churchyard at Mackle stands the memorial to Hall Caine. Slumbering in the deep solitude of the hills he loved so well. The point of Ayr during certain seasons is a riot of moorland flowers of all kinds. This is the most northerly point of the Isle of Man. One of the 5 lighthouses, the Point of Ayr, is a perfect example of its kind. Mainly from Scotland and Northern Ireland come the folk to work in the kipper houses, and this is the end product for which the island is justly famous. Starting work each morning at 6 o'clock, the herring gutters with bewildering dexterity prepare the fish for smoking. Machines have their uses even here, and modern methods are employed to supplement the task of the hand workers. The herrings are put into their respective slots and travel along until they emerge at the other end, completely clean and ready for the brine baths. It is a very, very specialized task. After immersion in the brine, the herrings are hung on tenterhooks, and who hasn't at one time or another been on those? Fires of oak wood are lit in the smoke houses or kilns. The fires must never blaze, only smoulder. This man smokes kippers. He places sticks of herring on racks within the kiln, where they are carefully watched for up to 12 hours until they are literally done to a turn. In each house there are in the region of 5,000 to 6,000 herring hanging at the same time, and here smoking is permitted. Mainly for export, other fish are packed between layers of salt. Talk about packed like sardines. From fish to films is apt to make one a little shy. And they're just one happy family, and their faces are certainly proof of this. Happy at their work? Well, what do you think? No dyes are allowed in the production of Manx skippers. They are smoked as they have been for centuries. About 200 yards up the River Silverburn is the delightful Monk's Bridge at Rushen Abbey. It is a humpbacked bridge of 2 arches in a perfect setting. The abbey itself was a complete ruin even in 1660, so that it must now be many hundreds of years old. Because of its enchanting situation, thousands come to Rushen Abbey. Walks can be taken in the beautiful grounds. One can relax at leisure, or, if energetic, take part in the dancing. No one would leave Rushen Abbey without sampling one of the main attractions, the fruit and cream. And wise judges they are too. Craignish is a picture postcard village, said to be the most Manx of all villages in Man. The scenery around it is wonderful. Harry Kelly's cottage is a museum containing some of the most interesting relics of the island's history. So on to Port Erin, a beautiful though unspoilt town of 1,200 people. Here they say that every house is within sound of the sea, and most are certainly within sight of it. Formerly a small fishing village, it still has its whitewashed cottages on the shore. The harbour rails are hung with fishing nets, and the quays strewn with crab and lobster pots. Port Erin is a resort looking out across a sheltered bay to the open sea. Research on all aspects of sea life is carried out at the Marine Biological Station. A fine fish, a favourite of sea anglers, is the pollock, a close relative of the cod, and the local fishermen call them callie. The so-called Dahlia anemone is a sort of stationary jellyfish which stings its prey to death with its alluring pink petals, and clinging to the rock is a big, spiny starfish. Lurking in many a rocky crevice lies the Rickley conger, a big brother of the common eel. And this big brother is certainly watching, for he will swallow almost anything. The spiny lobster shows his points. He makes an interesting study of underwater propulsion. The poor relation of the place, the dab, flits around to see what all the stir is about, while the lobster just keeps on walking. Now let's move on to the marine hatchery, where man steps in to aid nature in the restocking of the seas. Out of the tank comes the female lobster carrying thousands of shining black eggs. Each of these will produce a baby lobster, but in the sea, thousands will perish. It takes 5 years before a lobster is ready to meet its mayonnaise. These are less than 1 week old. Not much bigger than a penny is this one, 1 year old. He will change his armor many times before he fulfills his destiny. Port Erin swimming pool was built 60 years ago, when it was an offence for persons of the opposite sex to approach within 100 yards of each other. A very different story today. Port St Mary, 13 miles from Douglas, with its delightful beaches and very ancient streets, is a busy port in the fishing season. Its people have always had a friendly rivalry with the neighbouring township of Port Erin. The Calf of Man lies half a mile off the southwestern coast. Separated from the mainland by the Sound, through which races a dangerous tide, there is only one landing point, and the islet, occupied by a single family, is the property of the Manx National Trust. In the reign of Queen Victoria, the whole of Douglas Harbour was what today is merely the north portion. Now ships tie up at the modern quaysides of Douglas, the gateway to an enchanting island of history, tradition, and beauty.